About 100,000 people die each year in U.S. hospitals from infections that they get while they're in the hospital. Less than half that many die on U.S. highways. The hospital deaths are due to poor housekeeping and poor hygiene. Floors, walls, and doors are not cleaned regularly or thoroughly. Room dividers are almost never cleaned. The carts that carry food trays and the trays themselves are usually contaminated from handling and coughing. Cooks and other food handlers can easily infect the food by not washing properly after using the bathroom. Doctors and nurses are just as guilty as other staff. Doctors rarely clean their stethoscopes after each patient. Nurses apply blood pressure cuffs to patient after patient without cleaning the cuffs. Doctors often put on gloves without washing their hands first. As a result, the germs on their hands are transferred to the outside of the gloves. Consumer groups warn patients that they must demand cleanliness. If they see or suspect unsanitary conditions, they must tell someone immediately. It could be a matter of life or death. But, as one patient said, "No way! You don't tell your boss that he has bad breath, and you don't tell your doctor that he needs to wash his hands." Rebecca's stomach hurt. She said that sometimes it felt like someone was peeling the skin off her belly. That pain felt worse than when she gave birth 17 years ago. She finally went to a doctor. He asked a lot of questions and then examined her. He decided that she needed a couple of ultrasound tests. The tests revealed that she had 2 small ovarian cysts. The doctor said he did not think that those cysts were causing the problem. He wanted to do another test. It was called a colonoscopy. Rebecca told her boyfriend Ron about the doctor's suggestion. "A colonoscopy? You've got a problem in your belly, and he wants to examine your butt? Where did you find this quack? I'll bet he got his degree off the internet." Rebecca asked her boyfriend where he got his medical degree from. Of course, he had no medical degree, but he told Rebecca that it was just common sense. If your car isn't running right, and the mechanic wants to look in your trunk to find the problem, what would you think? Would you let him charge you good money to examine your trunk, or would you go find a mechanic who knows what he's doing? Rebecca went to a medical site on the internet later and discovered that some colon problems definitely could cause stomach pains. Hannah's daddy was a teacher who barely made enough money to raise his 6 kids. Hannah wore hand-me-downs from her older sisters. For Christmas, she usually got used dolls and books. As a child, she yearned to have the beautiful clothes, cars, and homes that she often saw on TV and in magazines. Several years after she graduated from college, she became part owner of a successful interior decorating business in Manhattan. Her life became what she had dreamed about as a little girl. A successful businesswoman, she had a handsome, wealthy fiancé. She owned her own co-op near Central Park. She took skiing vacations in the winter and exotic cruises in the summer. At the age of 30, Hannah was on top of the world. Then she underwent a routine health checkup, and her perfect world crumbled. Her doctor told her that she had pancreatic cancer. Surgery was necessary to determine how much the cancer had spread. Hannah was operated on a week later. The surgeon suspected that cancer had spread to vital organs. 10 days later, the lab confirmed his suspicions. Hannah's doctor said he could treat her with chemotherapy and painkillers, but it was just a matter of time before the cancer killed her. She asked how much time. He guessed that she had less than a year to live. How can this be, Hannah wondered. Doesn't this always happen to someone else? A couple of weeks later, She visited another cancer specialist. He examined her and read her medical and lab reports. He said he agreed with her surgeon. "If you have any once-in-a-lifetime plans, do them now," he advised. Instead, Hannah spent her last months in her co-op, tended to by hospice workers. Her family and friends visited her regularly. The moment before she died, she opened her eyes and tried to say something to her fiancé. She squeezed his hand weakly. She was in constant pain, her fiancé said. At the end, she could barely whisper. She weighed 80 pounds when she died. I can't believe that God allows things like this to happen. The local University Blood Center had a blood drive today at the Civic Center Auditorium. Almost 300 people showed up, but about 50 were turned away for various medical reasons. 50 others left because the lines were moving so slowly. The event concluded at 6 p.m., 3 hours after the scheduled close. It was a long day for everyone, administrators, nurses, and donors, but there were plenty of chairs and tables, and many people brought their own books, magazines, or newspapers. The first thing the donors had to do, of course, was fill out the donor registration and screening form. When they finished filling out the form, they waited until a nurse called them to her desk. The average adult body contains 8 to 12 pints of blood. Donors can give 1 pint at a time. It takes one's body 2 to 4 weeks to replace this amount. Most donors filled up the pint bag within 5 to 10 minutes. Before leaving, the donors received a sheet of instructions, including: do not lift any heavy objects for 12 hours. Leave your pressure bandage on for 2 to 3 hours. Do not smoke for at least 30 minutes. Avoid alcohol for the rest of the day. Do not do any strenuous activity for 24 hours. I wish I could hug and kiss all the volunteers that are here today, said Martha, the blood center donor recruiter. Many donors underestimate the importance of what they're doing. They think it is no big deal, but it is a big deal. Their blood is actually saving lives, helping other people to live. We cannot thank them enough for that, nor can the recipient. If he says one more thing to me, I'm going to hit him, Roy thought. Roy was thinking about Danny, a fellow golfer he had just met today. Danny was a successful orthopedist, 60 years old and quite overweight. Roy was a retired Army officer, 80 and wiry. Roy was walking. Danny was riding in a golf cart. On the second tee, Danny stood directly behind Roy as Roy was getting ready to hit. Although that was bad golf etiquette, Roy didn't say anything, but because he was thinking about Danny instead of golf, Roy hit a bad tee shot. Danny chuckled at Roy's bad effort. You should have kept your head down, Danny told Roy. On the fourth green, Danny took his glove off just as Roy was getting ready to putt. Roy heard the glove's Velcro crackling and missed a 2-foot putt. He glared at Danny. Danny looked straight back at him. Those short putts are the first to go when you get old, right? Jenny was hot for Roger. They were both nurses, and they were both married to someone else. Jenny knew that the feeling was mutual. Roger had that sparkle in his eye whenever he saw her. He often grabbed Jenny's hand and pulled her aside to talk to her privately about something that was quite unimportant. They frequently gave each other shoulder massages. It was only a matter of time, Jenny figured. You'd better be careful, Carol said. You don't think anyone has noticed the two of you? It's not like you're being very secretive. Carol was Jenny's co-worker and best friend. Well, we don't have anything to be secretive about, Jenny replied. We're not doing anything, so we don't have to be careful about anything. Who are you kidding? You've told me plenty of times how hot you think Roger is. What are you going to do when he gets tired of just flirting? You won't be able to resist. And then the fun will be over sooner than you think. You could both end up getting divorced. And then, even if you married each other, how could you trust each other, since both of you would be cheaters? Jenny told Carol that her imagination was out of control. Nothing was going to happen. Just then, Carol saw Roger walking toward them. He quietly came up behind Jenny and gave her a big, tight hug. Jenny grinned broadly. Carol rolled her eyes and walked away. Jake was always sick. He repeatedly got infections, mostly colds or the flu, from patients. He considered himself lucky to be alive, considering what he'd read about deadly bacteria and viruses that were developing immunity to all the latest drugs. A hospital is a dangerous place. He wanted out of the hospital, but he had nowhere to go. He was no spring chicken. The pay, benefits, and hours were good. His schedule regularly included 3 or 4 day weekends, but he was just going through the same motions day after day. He was at the top of the ladder for an orderly. There were no other jobs that he could qualify for unless he wanted to go to school for several years to become a tech or a registered nurse. But those jobs would mean working in a hospital. He wanted out. He wished he had stayed with his old job as an assistant pro at Brookside Golf Course. The pay was low and the benefits were few, but the game of golf was his passion. He loved teaching the game to others. He was a happy man when he worked at the golf course. The freshly mowed green grass, the blue sky, the white clouds. Not a sick person in sight, only healthy people enjoying themselves. Why had he quit that job? He wondered over and over. 10 years ago, he must have had a good reason, but he sure couldn't remember what it was now. His life was now a constant regret about the poorest decision he had ever made.